Thanks everybody for joining. This is a joint Government Affairs Economic Development Committee meeting for the month of May. And we're super excited to have this very hot topic on the status and updates of Mauna Kea astronomy. And before I introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Doug Simons, I'd like to share with everyone that we do have a legislative wrap-up session next week, Thursday, the 29th at UCB 100. It's at UH Hilo, and that's going to be hopefully a well-attended event. We got a lineup of star-studded lineup of state senators and representatives from Hawaii Island, predominantly on the east side. And if you haven't signed up, please do so. It will not be recorded, so you have to be there to get the content. And we plan that it'll be very well informed, and we have 6 of them attending. So we have Senator Lorraine Inouye, Tim Richards, Rep. Iligan, Leloy, Rep. Kush, who's here on the call today, and also Rep. Chris Todd. So make it a point to sign up if you haven't, and hopefully we'll see you there. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Doug Simons from the UH Institute of Astronomy. He's the director there. He's also been our Hawaii Island Chamber of Commerce past president and a past board of directors. So please welcome Doug Simons. Take it away, Doug.
Okay, thanks, David. I'm switching over to screen share, so to hang on with me.
Okay.
Hopefully this will be seamless and not crash. I apologize emphatically for my voice, which is never strong to begin with, but I came back from Washington, where I was last week, with absolutely no information about the federal budget and a hell of a case of the flu. So it's kind of a lose-lose from every direction.
Yeah, no, I would welcome that if you are willing to do it, because we're happy to do it whatever way you all tell us.
Because then it'll be its own new tag, right? It'll be a new.
Okay, I think I've got computer audio switched on. I've got a couple of video clips in here. And some of you may have seen elements of this if you attended the Mauna Kea Management Board meeting last go around, where I was asked to give this presentation. And I honestly had no idea who was on Zoom. We only had a few people in the MyFaith library when I gave it, like I said, a few weeks ago. But it has in turn triggered a number of requests for me to repeat it. This is a slightly tweaked version compared to the one I showed there. I'm giving also a slightly tweaked version next Friday at the Hawaii Leeward Planning Commission meeting or committee meeting. And I think Wendy's trying to set something up in Kona for me and Ross as well. So anyway, kind of making the rounds through this. And it's intended to give you a little oversight of where we are in astronomy, some historical context, and a little deeper understanding of the issues in front of all of us as members of this community to ensuring that there's a pathway forward for the bulk of this century with Mauna Kea astronomy. So with that, I like to introduce the topic by sort of at a very high level, pun intended, describe for you attributes about the Mauna Kea observatories. There's a Google shot of the summit. Obviously, this was prior to CSO, which you see in the lower left, and Hokule'a having been removed recently. So the replacement cost for the hardware you're looking at is very conservatively about $1 billion. It's close to 600 jobs right now, people directly employed on this island in the Mauna Kea observatories. If you add up Maui and Oahu, it's more like 1,000 to 1,200 people that are employed by astronomy. And if you add up all the money, most of it being international, for the Mauna Kea observatories operating, it's sort of between 70 to $80 million. And most of that is injected directly into the economy by the salaries of that 600 or so people that work at the observatories. So the observatories are really quite the aggregator of international funds that are being directly injected to the economy here. It's also a remarkable international partnership represented by these various flags. Each flag is intended to represent a funding agency, a federal funding agency for the most part, from around the world. There's like a dozen or so scattered around here. It's one of the best examples, I suspect, of international partnership in the state of Hawaii. And I'm always fond of pointing out some of the flags that these some of the countries these flags represent don't get along necessarily very well in public. But in the science community, that is sort of overlooked, and we have really remarkable collaboration across virtual borders that astronomy represents. It's also a fact that the observatory is a really important bridge to the community in ways that I will describe for you over the course of this presentation. So I'm going to take a little bit of a detour, but only to give you historical context, and also because I've wanted to raise awareness about part of the story of the history of astronomy that for me is one of the most remarkable aspects. And that's about a guy called Alika Herring. There's some old pictures of him. He was a native Hawaiian and a absolute masterful optician, i.e., someone who could craft by hand, grind and polish super high quality astronomical mirrors. And you see him there in California, where he worked for a company called Cave Optical in the 50s and 60s, literally by hand, grinding and polishing, I think, a couple thousand of these mirrors. One of them, he set out to be the best mirror in the history of the world, basically, in terms of its finish and its accuracy. And it became known as the Herring Super Mirror. If you want to Google that, feel free to do so. It's legendary amongst the amateur astronomy community, myself included. As a kid, I ground and polished a couple of 8-inch mirrors for my homemade telescopes. And I like to point this out because Alika is often overlooked in this story. Gerard Kuiper is generally highlighted as the very prominent University of Arizona astronomer who came here and identified Mauna Kea as a potential observing site. But it's actually Alika who, through the combination of his incredible Herring super mirror, the visual acuity that was superhuman, in my opinion, for what he was able to do in terms of very high contrast imaging with his naked eye, and the phenomenal clarity of images that for periods of a few seconds of time allowed Alika to witness the sky above Mauna Kea as if there was no air at all. It was almost as if he was out in outer space. So there's a little video extract I'm going to show you from a PBS documentary that was created back in the 1980s when I was a graduate student, actually, at IFA. This is the last and to my knowledge, only interview. It's very quick of Alika and gives you a little, like I said, context for how it all started.
The story of astronomy on Mauna Kea begins in 1964, when the mountain attracted the attention of the man often called the father of modern planetary astronomy, the late Gerard Kuiper of the University of Arizona. At first, Kuiper wanted to build a night observatory on Haleakala, a 10,000-foot volcano on the island of Maui. Daytime solar research already was being done here. But Kuiper found that the mountain often was cloudy by late afternoon. Yet, 75 miles to the southeast, he usually saw the sky starting to clear above Mauna Kea. Kuiper needed a way to get to the top of the higher mountain, so he got permission from Hawaii Governor John Burns to build a crude road to the summit. That done, an observation dome was set up for a small telescope. And for the next few months, an associate of Kuiper would use the telescope to determine the qualities of the site. That telescope now is in the front yard of a house in Anaheim, California, home of the man who built and used it. Alika Herring would work alone on the summit, huddled in the bitter night cold, to find out if Mauna Kea was as good as Kuiper thought.
I was sure from the very beginning that it was going to be a terrific site. I never had any doubts from the very beginning, because, as I say, there was just so many things in its favor. It had to be good.
So hopefully the audio came through for you okay on that. As a little interesting side aspect of this, for those of you that know Herring Kulua in Keaukaha, I believe Herring is Alika's great uncle, and takes great pride in this connection that the native Hawaiian with his handmade telescope substantially discovered Mauna Kea as the superb site that it is for astronomy. At some point, I'd like to give a full presentation on Alika with actually Larry Kimura, Leek was also the leader of a Hawaiian steel guitar band in the 70s. Larry knew him as a DJ back in the 70s. I know him as a remarkable optical craftsman and observationalist astronomer. So what Alika discovered, without necessarily knowing all the details at the time, is that there are a number of unique properties about the summit of Mauna Kea that allow observations from that location to be, pursued in ways that simply aren't possible elsewhere on the planet, basically. And perhaps the most important attribute that Mauna Kea has as a site for conducting astronomy is its shape. This is a picture of Mauna Kea taken from Mauna Loa. And as anybody who's familiar with, the summit of either of those volcanoes, they are both shield volcanoes and therefore have very gentle topographic relief as they go up from sea level to 14,000 feet, give or take. And essentially what happens is that as trade winds blow up and over Mauna Kea, they come in from thousands of miles away with zero topographic obstacles, shall we say. It's just essentially a surfaceless ocean that the air is passing over. And that smooth flow goes up and over Mauna Kea. And because it isn't a jagged structure like you have in the Andes or the Rockies or the Himalayas, the air remains, for the most part, smooth, called a laminar flow, as it passes up and over the summit. And that is the secret, perhaps the most important secret to the physical properties of Mauna Kea that make it such a remarkable site for conducting astronomy. Other aspects of being a high altitude site also help out, including the fact that because it's so high, the relative humidity is roughly 10% on average. That means that certain wavelengths can get to the summit of the Mauna Kea that can't get to lower elevations, including infrared and what we call submillimeter or high frequency radio waves as well. Off to the sides, you see this thin layer of cloud, which I'm sure many of you have witnessed. That is not an accident. That's called a diurnal inversion layer. There's actually air going down from the upper atmosphere. We're part of a high pressure system that normally sets up over the north central Pacific. And that keeps the tops of those clouds below the summit of Mauna Kea. Here's a time-lapse shot at night from Mauna Loa looking towards Mauna Kea. And you see that the clouds are there almost every night in some form or fashion, but for the most part, they tend to stay below the summit of Mauna Kea. The net effect being that if you're on the summit looking up, no problem. If you're looking down, all the better, because those clouds are helping to block city lights from around the island. And I'm very grateful. I don't know if we have any folks from the county, but Hawaii County has some of the most progressive and astronomy-friendly lighting ordinance constraints in the country right now. And that has been extremely helpful in keeping the dark skies above Mauna Kea protected. So over the past 50 years or so, there's been just a remarkable transformation in Mauna Kea astronomy. On the left is the cover page of what's only about a 10-page document, but is incredibly important in the annals of astronomy. That's the cover page for the so-called master lease or general lease from DLNR to the University of Hawaii. That picture towards the right or center there, that's a photo of the first delegation to go up after the road that you heard Johnny Carson, who narrated that little video, mention. And that is Governor Burns with the Miley Lay in the sort of the middle there, if I can pull up a pointer. Yeah, sorry, not working. He's right in here. And they headed up just a few weeks after that road was cut and after Alika Herring had a couple weeks on the mountain. And he realized that this was just a remarkable site for conducting astronomy. And what happened after that lease was signed back in 1968, again, this was before anybody set foot on the moon, in the middle of the Vietnam War and all the turmoil of the 60s. What happened after that signature could not have been predicted in the 50 years since. That includes Nobel Prize award winning science, including the discovery of the largest form of energy in the universe called dark energy, black hole research that led to Andrea Ghez and her remarkable work at UCLA using Keck to demonstrate we have a black hole in the center of our galaxy. You see Keck Observatory there in the segmented mirror that has been used repeatedly by other large telescopes. The ELTs that are possible today are all traceable to this incredible engineering feat at Keck Observatory. These are the infrared arrays developed at the Institute for Astronomy, about 15 of which are now in James Webb Space Telescope. The most distant objects in the universe have historically always been found on Mauna Kea. The first exoplanets have been detected from Mauna Kea. Then you have just incredible outreach like we do at, or is done at Imilo Astronomy Center, the Mauna Kea Scholar Program, and the Ahuahea Noa program, which under the guidance of Larry Kimura and the team at Kahakaula, uses Hawaiian protocols in naming to assign Hawaiian names to discoveries of great significance made from Hawaii-based telescopes. So with that as a little background, I'll give you a couple of examples of the magnitude of the impact scientifically enabled by research from Mauna Kea. I created this picture maybe 10 years or so ago. And you see my little sort of markers there in a path towards the Alaskan mountain range. I took this picture like 20 years ago. Back then, the first image of a black hole had not been made, but I have it there on the front. I'm confident that in time, and not that long, we're going to find life out there. There's been a tremendous amount of research into that. Identifying the very first stars is also very doable with facilities like James Webb Space Telescope. And then beyond that, sort of the holy grails of new physics, whether or not we live in one universe or a multi-universe. Those are all things that are fundamental questions that humanity has asked for many, many centuries, basically, in one form or another. So what are a couple of the secrets, deepest secrets that we now know about the universe as a result of Mauna Kea astronomy? Well, one is the fact that we know how the universe will end. We know now that as a result of conditions in the first tiniest fraction of a second after the Big Bang, essentially wired into the physics of the universe was its self-destruction. You don't have to worry. You just do the math, and the accelerated rate of the universe created by dark energy, substantially discovered by Mauna Kea research, allows you to extrapolate that in about 1 trillion years, the universe will tear itself apart. The expansion rate of space itself will exceed the speed of light, and nothing will exist at that point. I have no idea how to do physics in a superluminal frame of reference. Everything just basically goes away. So as I say, the ultimate fate of the universe, a question without an answer in all previous generations, is now known due to the discovery of dark energy, and that was substantially due to research done on Mauna Kea. That's the magnitude of some of the research done on, right here on Hawaii Island. And just as one more example, I like to point out to people that when you look up in the night sky, this is a shot of the Pleiades star cluster, keep this in mind, that around every star you look at up there, there are planets. We now know this. When I was in grad school, there were 9 planets, and then one got kicked out named Pluto. That's another conversation altogether. But most recently, about 20 years or so ago, the revelation occurred with research, a lot of it conducted on Mauna Kea. And we now know that there are planets around essentially every star, and about 1 in 5 of them is about the size of the Earth. And the race is on now to figure out which of them are potentially harboring life through searches for what we call biosignatures in their atmospheres. So how that connects back to Mauna Kea? Well, the first exoplanet detected was with something called transit photometry, in which as the planet moves in front of its host star, from our perspective, you get a tiny little drop in the brightness of the star. From that, you can infer the planet's size and estimate its orbital period and other basic properties as well. Today, that technique, first demonstrated on Keck, has been used to find over 5,000 planets from satellite and ground-based observations, all triggered initially, though, from Mauna Kea. Beyond that, we've also had the very first images of planets outside of those in our solar system from Mauna Kea. Those little white dots going around the black hole right there, that's a very bright star being blocked in this image. And there are 4 little white dots going counterclockwise. Those are each planets. They're each about 10 times the mass of Jupiter. And this is just incredible that not only can we take pictures, we can take movies of planets orbiting around nearby stars from the sun of Mauna Kea. So exquisite are the site conditions combined with the technologies used up there that we've been able to accomplish that remarkable feat. So switching gears a little bit again, I want to try and shed a slightly different light, if you will, on what I call the Hawaii State Astronomy Program. And this is really important because I think the details of how this is structured historically and how I lead the Institute for Astronomy is captured in this slide in a very high-level sense. In essence, in exchange for providing Mauna Kea and Haleakala access to various federal governments around the world, the state of Hawaii was provided access to observatories sponsored by those governments, enabling the state's astronomy program. We would never be able to afford $1 billion+ worth of observatories in Mauna Kea. So the basic deal is that in exchange for access to that site, the state of Hawaii gets access to those telescopes. It's essentially the same model that's been used for years in Chile. There they get 10% of the observing time for Chilean universities, and in Spain they get 20% of the time for Spanish universities in exchange for access to La Palma as their sort of preferred observing site. So with that in mind, the state program is hosted by the University of Hawaii, and I have extreme honor and pleasure in being able to lead the state of Hawaii's astronomy program at UH. The institution tasked with creating a program that broadly benefits the state and is part of a strategy envisioned decades ago by Governor Burns to leverage Hawaii's natural resources to increase our global presence and value while benefiting the people of Hawaii. This is kind of a remarkable concept. We take for granted the air above Hawaii. It turns out the air above Mauna Kea is in fact a natural resource because when you look through it, you can see the universe in ways that simply isn't possible elsewhere. And Governor Burns knew that. He realized that it's not just the sea, it's not just the Aina, those are essential natural resources for us. It's actually the air above us that's also a key and unique natural resource here in Hawaii. What that's led to is development of observatories on Mauna Kea that combine offer an incredibly diverse range of capabilities for conducting research and education. On the right-hand side, if you want to do, for example, wide field imaging, where wide field is use a camera that has upwards of 300 to 400 million pixels in its focal plane. You'd use Subaru or CFHT or Euclid. If you want to do the very highest resolution imaging possible, use the Keck observatories right here. If you want to do the very best infrared observations in the world, Gemini North. I worked there for 18 years and I was on the design and construction team for that telescope. That is the most sensitive infrared telescope on the planet at wavelengths out to about 10 microns or so. So it's the combination of these facilities that allow us to conduct multi-dimensional research. I realize that they all look like domes, and I think there's sort of an assumption that they all do the same thing. In practice, what's happened over the past 50 years is they've all diverged and kind of specialized to carve out their niches. And it's very common for multiple telescopes because they offer different types of research opportunity to be used to conduct observations of any single object. The net result of all of that is this chart, and it shows something, it's a parameter called science impact, which is a metric that combines the total number of peer-reviewed scientific papers produced by co-located observing complexes around the world, where you can score high by numbers of papers or citations, which is essentially quality of paper. Keep in mind that there may be 100 observatory complexes that don't even show up on this chart. There on the far left are MKO, Mauna Kea observatories. This chart is a couple of years out of date. Every year I update it though, and every year the Mauna Kea observatories come out #1 in terms of their science product. VLT, so that is the European Southern Observatory. That's all of Europe and all of their investment in Chile that they have made over the years. La Palma, that is the Spanish investment on the island of La Palma. What you're looking at for Mauna Kea observatories, that actually beats Hubble Space Telescope by by the same metric. So this is something that's just remarkable if you think about it. You're part of a county in a state, and members of a community that are able to enjoy and bear witness to and be part of this remarkable contribution to scientific knowledge on a global basis. No other community members in any other state could sit down and see a chart like that applied to their county. So this is something I hope everybody is able to appreciate and be proud of, because it's a combination of many factors, amongst all of them, most importantly, the community that has made this type of science productivity possible. So I'm going to go from talking about sort of current and past aspects of Mauna Kea astronomy to the challenges ahead for enabling astronomy through the rest of this decade, rest of the century, give or take. And we're going to do that by, again, this was a presentation originally shown in Mauna Kea Management Board, but I left it in here to give you a sense of how long we have been after the daunting task of renewing land use agreements to ensure there's a future for astronomy, that it builds off of what I just shared with you over the past sort of 20 minutes or so. And that there's only 6 slides when I showed this to the Mauna Kea Management Board back, I think, in 2018, 2019. That was the first slide, called Domino Theory, in which I was outlining my concern that due to delays at that point by the university in getting everything lined up to be able to renew leases, that telescopes which are coupled at the hip financially and operationally and otherwise could go down as a result of an inability to have telescopes remaining after some drop offline and are decommissioned, pick up the slack, if you will, and covered outstanding shared costs and what's left behind. That's one of my very first efforts at drawing a master lease timeline. That one only goes out to 2023. I'll show you one that goes out to the rest of the decade in a minute. That shows you the incredible complexity of decommissioning CSO, which took the better part of a decade to complete. I point out the next 5 years are crucial. And then my last slide in that presentation was this one, basically saying, what should we do? And I'll quote myself, "This is why, as an overarching priority, those who are in a position to ensure a future for Mauna Kea astronomy must do so by the first half of the next decade." We are in 2025. That time is now. So I outline here some goals. These are, again, kind of the world according to Doug, but that's all you got for this presentation. Goals for future Mauna Kea MKSR land authorization. And this is what I very much took into the early negotiations between the observatories and the university. First of all, lay a foundation for a vibrant future for Hawaii astronomy through this century. Recognizing, as I hopefully have proven to you, that the pending agreements, which need to be cast this decade, will literally enable a significant fraction of ground-based astronomy this century. Recall that chart I showed you a few slides back. Give and take is definitely part of the process. That said, failure to reach closure is simply unacceptable. And that is why I'm doing this little speaking tour. And if you know what I've been doing for years now, understand where I'm coming from. And to the extent possible, elevate outcomes for everyone. Recognizing decommissioning may be an outcome for some facilities. 2 telescopes have come down. More will come down. I'm not going to go into details at this point. But as I said before, we have to be very careful in this process, because as each telescope is removed, that means the remaining telescopes have to pick up the financial slack, because the cost for shared infrastructure is still the same. So a critical pending decision for the new Mauna Kea Authority is, what is the number of telescopes allowed on the summit? That the answer to that allows the existing telescopes to figure out what the merged cost, the shared cost, for a new master or for a new set of leases is going to be. And this is something that's absolutely crucial to get resolved soon. Some boundary conditions, the whole process. I've hinted at it, but to be clear, all the observatories are literally legally bound under their current subleases to complete not only just their decommissioning, but all site restoration by the end of 2033 if they do not have new land authorization completed. In practice, if you assume that you can take down a telescope in 5 years, and it takes at least a couple of years, maybe 3, to go through the permitting process, the EIS, et cetera, that means we have maybe 3 to 4 years of operational lifetime in what we've got up there before the observatories have to submit their notices of intent to DECOM. So this is a very, very challenging time, and I want to raise awareness of everybody that this is not a head fake. This is the real deal, and we need to take this very seriously if we're going to keep Mauna Kea astronomy going into this century. The existing general lease conditions remain in effect until new leases are granted by MKSOA. That in principle cannot happen by until mid-2028. Getting everything in place at MKSOA to even issue leases, should they decide to, is going to be a daunting challenge. I'm asked many times, what are our off ramps, Doug? What can we do to avoid this problem? One is potentially 1-year revocable lease or sublease extensions. I will simply say that's a one hell of a way, and I think, frankly, an embarrassing way for the state of Hawaii to sustain a $1 billion research complex. I think we should do better than that. And then finally, the future of Hawaii astronomy, and I cannot emphasize this enough, truly lies in your hands and the local community. We need community to support to enable the future that I think the observatories represents to our kids, to our community, and to the future of astronomy on so many different levels. So this is not a new process. I've been in the thick of it for a while. For me, it really got going in earnest back in 2014. This is an EIS prep notice issued actually as part of the work to enable TMT. And that got put on pause and wasn't restarted until 2018 as a result of the 2015 protests on Mauna Kea. You may recall Governor Ige's 10-point plan. Amongst those points in his plan was to suspend the EIS work that was underway for the new master lease from which subleases for the existing telescopes could be derived. When 2018 came, I was director of Canada France Wide Telescope, and I recognized that we need to get going within the observatories to kind of get our acts together and organize what we need in terms of lease terms to be able to engage the university in a speedy and efficient way to get this whole process going. That got basically put on pause after starting in 2018 for a couple of reasons. One was the 2019 Mauna Kea protests that you all are very familiar with, which led to the closure of Mauna Kea Access Road. And then COVID. COVID just shut us down cold. So that injected delays in the process as well. We restarted in early 2021, myself trying to lead the observatories into this process as COVID was winding down. UH was conducting their own parallel discussions. Greg Chun was leading those. And in mid-2021, we decided that we needed to have joint discussions between the observatories and UH. I won't go into the details, but basically we crafted a set of high-level terms that needed to be negotiated that I'll share with you now. Mainly just to give you a sense of what remains ahead to be codified in new leases. And that ranges from the forming of the agreement, decommissioning plans, will there be sinking funds required to decom telescopes, shared services and their costs, the UH observing time, what is the governance model. These are each fairly weighty topics that need to be negotiated, written down, agreed to by our funding agencies and ultimately by the state agencies as well. So, something to keep in mind is that when MKSOA steps into the forefront, I think most of these terms are still going to be relevant when they think through and analyze what the leases are going to entail. But my question there is, at what level do they want to engage? When do they want to engage? Who will be involved, et cetera? I'm certainly working within the observatories and universities to get us organized. But I really do, need and look forward to MKSO being able to, literally sit across from us in that table and figure out how we proceed on these, dozen or so different topics. In various settings, I've shown this chart. I won't walk you through all the details. It's a bit busy, but essentially it's a chart that I've shown legislators prior to Act 255 and haven't changed because the only thing that's really changing is this red line here, which is marching left to right. So we're sort of midway through 2025. On the left-hand side is the formation of House Bill 2024, which led to Act 255 and the Mauna Kea Authority. The board formed and started officially as an entity in mid-2023. So we're about 2 years into their 5-year transition period between MKSO and UH. Some really key things have to happen, though, including how many telescopes are allowed on the summit. From that, keep in mind that each of the observatories is sponsored by federal agencies, and each observatory at the director level needs to engage those agencies and get approval. So it's not just a one-off set of conversations here in Hawaii. It's going to be that sort of n-dimensional with all the federal funding agencies involved in this conversation as well to determine whether or not they can afford the terms that are proposed for new leases. Where it gets essentially off the rails is on the right-hand side here. This is sort of my graphic way of capturing what I said before. Let's say new leases are in fact issued as soon as legally allowed right now, so July 1, 2028. You are already in the window of time in which notices of intent probably have to be issued for decommissioning the telescopes. That little detail aside, I am 100% confident that contested cases will be launched against those new leases, and they will go into litigation and probably have to go into the Supreme Court for ultimate resolution. So I do not have an answer for how to get out of this jam on the right. At a bare minimum, I believe it will require amendments to Act 255. It will require community support to have the resolve to drive those amendments. I'm a big supporter of seeing the Mauna Kea Authority go forward and succeed in their mission. My concern has always been the implementation challenge of making that happen when you have a finite amount of time, a very finite amount of time to actually implement that. So I don't want to end on a kind of a gloomy note. I'm just trying to be upfront with you all about where we're at in this whole process. And then I just have a few slides to share with you as I have thought through, as you can imagine, quite some time now about what are the basic things that we want to see in a future set of agreements for observatories on Mauna Kea. And one that I think is broadly embraced, including by those who are skeptical about telescopes on Mauna Kea, and that is that we're going to have observatories on Mauna Kea, which is arguably the best site on the planet for conducting astronomy research. Those observatories should enable world-leading research programs. In other words, we want top-notch observatories on the summit like we've got now. Anything less than that basically diminishes the magnitude of Mauna Kea as a unique portal on the universe. And I think that is a huge discredit to our island, to Mauna Kea, to our community to accept anything less than the very best on Mauna Kea. I also want to change the conversation a little bit in the sense that I hear on a fairly frequent basis in various circles the notion that progress is made every time a telescope is removed from Mauna Kea. In a sense, while I understand where that is to some extent coming from, for me, it's not just about removing telescopes. It's identifying what I call a sustainable number of observatories on Mauna Kea through the next period, through this century. Sustainable meaning we support them. We'll have some removed, some will stay, but we need to find at a community level what is sustainable. And by that, I mean not only just scientifically, but from an education, cultural, environmental, economic, et cetera, that we rally around with those various aspects in mind to support the telescopes that are left on Mauna Kea, that they are not continually being pressured to buckle, if you will, to be removed from the summit. Once they are, in fact, we've gone through 2032 and we've got a new set of agreements in place. There's a mechanism for telescopes to be removed through the termination or the eventual timing out of land use agreements. But that said, telescopes being decommissioned need to be replaced from time to time as well, if we're going to have nothing but the best telescopes on Mauna Kea. So that is an argument for TMT. If we're going to have the best on the summit, you can't do that with telescopes that could be over 100 years old. Right? We got to be able to replace some telescopes over the course of the century while having broad public support for when we got up there. So I'm trying to amplify the message that it isn't just about removing telescopes. It's about finding a sustainable number of telescopes and agreement that on some of those sites, we're going to bring them down over the course of the century, and we're going to put some up to maintain that #1 status. Another thing that I'm quite passionate about, because we are not unique in this challenge in Hawaii. There are other indigenous populations that are in conflict with astronomy, including in Australia and South Africa, where there are major astronomy developments occurring. I feel that our goal should be really high in Hawaii. I feel that we shouldn't just try and fix this locally, so to speak, that we should seek a deep and lasting solution that represents an example for the world of how an indigenous population working within the broader community, working within the astronomy community, is able to find a way to literally advance each other's interests going forward. And there are examples of that already with the Huhea Noa program that I mentioned before that led to Oumuamua and naming of other great discoveries. Larry and Kaiu and I have had a great time. I think we've given that Physics of Poe presentation maybe 20 times across the state in our joint exploration of the Kumulipo and how the incredible wisdom, staggering wisdom of the cosmology in the prelude to the Kumulipo maps into contemporary Big Bang cosmology. And then the final little heads up that I'll give about sort of where I would like to see astronomy go this century, and that is that it should provide transformative education opportunities for our kids. And I'm extremely passionate about that. If you look at the UH website today about the Mauna Kea Scholar announcement, you'll see the latest example of that. We can and we have been providing education opportunities found nowhere else in the world. And I believe that these leases should commit in binding terms that local students, high school students, should have access to these telescopes to support their own research and education programs. That isn't done anywhere else, but we can do that for our kids. And I say that not only for the benefit of our kids, but I feel strongly we need to grow a sense of ownership at the keiki level and beyond. And we do that in a generational sense. And it's a really strong statement, but I say education is as important as any other aspect of Hawaii astronomy. That includes science, economics, all that stuff. For me, having education built into the fiber of the future of Hawaii astronomy is what will perpetuate it. Speaking of which, this is a chart that I got from Nadine Mansett at CFHT. I got a few years ago, but just as an example of the range and depth of outreach programs and education programs the existing telescopes already contribute to. So this is a subset of what we do on an annual basis. There's like 100 or so in this list. The fact that I had to use like 4-point font to list all of this should speak volumes as to how much the $2 to $2.5 million a year that the observatories sponsor on education and outreach across the island is emerging through these incredible programs all across the island. Some of you may be familiar already, but I want to emphasize that we're making really good progress with the new UH Space Science and Engineering Initiative. Mahalo to the legislature for funding faculty. We've got almost all of those faculty positions filled now. And I believe we have 10 students at UH Hilo enrolled in the new SSEI, the 2+2 engineering program that is being enabled at UH Hilo for the first time. So this new team, the SSEI team, is tasked with helping us develop advanced manufacturing, connect with aerospace. We intend to bring this whole program to Maui, not just keep it on Hawaii Island, and basically enable advanced technology development here on the island for the betterment both economically and from a standpoint of education. So now students can take 2 years of their pre-engineering here at UH Hilo, where I'm currently located, and then 2 years of specialized engineering classes, be it in civil engineering or mechanical, computer, et cetera. And the Mauna Kea Observatories are obviously very strong supporters of this overall program. So how I'm trying to advance the Institute in this incredibly complicated world that we live in right now is basically to keep head down and keep plowing ahead. We have a number of initiatives within the Institute that are going forward. I'm just about to finish recruiting 8 new IFA faculty. Each of those represents new postdocs, new graduate students, capacity for educating undergrads as well. And of course, we have the new 10 or so space science and engineering faculty. It's about almost 20 FTEs that we're bringing to bear, so to speak, from a technical and educational research standpoint. IFA is amongst the other Manoa units becoming a native Hawaiian place of learning and working with a great team there at Manoa to establish that and incorporate that into the fiber of the Institute. And as I mentioned before, the SSEI program is underway. That includes a new building for which we have money to do a design study. That will go on one side of the IFA Hilo building or the other, but it's intended to be long-term the home for the new engineering program at UH Hilo. And this is a real neat picture. In fact, I'm going to meet Sienna this afternoon. You see her picture there with Repo Nishi. It's a couple of years ago. She won the Hokuala Scholarship from the Mauna Kea Scholars Program. Native Hawaiian young woman who graduated from Kamehameha Schools here at the KL campus. She's just completed her second year at Yale, where she's majoring in astrophysics. And she had an internship last year at IFA, and she's got another one this year. But she spent a couple of weeks here at home in Hilo before she goes to Manoa to work on her internship. And she is just a wonderful, wonderful person and an example of the capacity for enabling opportunities for our kids. I'm certain that you're looking at the face of the second Native Hawaiian PhD astrophysicist in history in the form of Sienna Leigh Bentz. So a takeaway point is, despite all the uncertainties about Mauna Kea astronomy, I'm absolutely steadfast in building capacity. I'm taking a full throttle, let's just get the job done approach on multiple fronts, working with community, various partners, be the industrial, civic, et cetera, like the chambers, to try and achieve positive outcomes for everybody, our keiki in particular. So back to the title for this presentation, namely the current state of Hawaii astronomy. I've tried to make the case that Hawaii astronomy has a 50-year legacy and in many respects is absolutely world leading. I can say it with complete confidence. The transition we're underway right now with the Mauna Kea Authority brings with it both challenges and opportunities. We are doing all we can to support that transition because we need it to be successful to ensure there's a future for astronomy and all that represents. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. The future for Mauna Kea astronomy principally lies in the hands of you all and our broader community here on Hawaii Island. So this, I'll finish with kind of cool little movie, not widely seen. This is shot from the catwalk of the UH 88-inch by a couple of Canadian astronomers looking across. And that in the middle of your field looks like the second floor of Canada France Hawaii Telescope with the concrete being poured there. So with that as background, I'll note that the Hawaiian Cultural Renaissance began about the time this Super 8 film was recorded a while ago. hang on, let's update here. Today, the future of Mauna Kea astronomy stands to be far richer than we ever imagined, not just because we have more telescopes. From my perspective, and in the end, I strongly feel that the cultural legacy and wisdom of Hawaiian kupuna, the collective will of our community, and the common thread our children's futures represent will be what perpetuates Hawaii astronomy this century. So it's a tall order that we all have, and this is essentially central to my job as IFA director, trying to align various visions for the future of Mauna Kea. Oftentimes these visions go in very different directions. My sense, though, and I'm convinced, is that there's so much overlap in our common interests in Mauna Kea and all that it represents for our community, that one way or another we will find a path forward despite what seems like daunting challenges in the near term. And with that, I thank you for your time. I've got about 5 minutes or so left for questions.
Thank you so much, Doug. That was a very compelling and fascinating presentation. And I can see why you're in high demand right now. I want to go to the chat. I don't see anything in the chat. Does anyone attending have any questions for Doug?
I just want to say thank you, Doug. You're a great friend to Hawaii.
Thanks, appreciate it.
And I also see our Economic Development Chair, Dennis Lin, has joined. So Dennis, you want to say a few words as we co-chair this event?
Hi, everybody. Sorry I was late. It's been a very busy day here with the council budget hearings. So just wanted to thank Doug for his presentation. This is the second time I'm hearing this presentation and seeing this presentation. But yeah, from the economic development standpoint, we need to look at all different opportunities that come our way. And astronomy is definitely one of them, especially when it comes to developing the next generation of workforce here on our island. So just really appreciate Doug and the rest of the astronomy community for what they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis. Dana, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, mahalo. Mahalo nui, Doug. Not only for the presentation, but for your body of work over the decades, honestly. I think we're all kind of feeling exactly what you were trying to get across, that this is an urgent moment and it's pivotal for the future of Hawaii Island. The things that I think could be optimistic right now is that workforce development is seeing a resurgent investment that we've never really seen before. And this is across the state. I was happy to contribute testimony to your bill. I'm so happy to hear that the lines were approved and that hiring has begun. I think in similar ways, we see movement with other bills that were paving the way for work-based learning opportunities with human resources at the state and county level, and the same at Department of Labor as well. But overall, there's a new investment in the current DOE budget. How it gets resolved and how it shakes out is yet to be determined, but that's also a very positive move, I believe. And Vibrant Hawaii has started a new work-based learning program, and we were in touch briefly through Mary Beth. But I would be very interested in maybe thinking how we can begin a larger hui and collaborate more directly with educators. I am new to this space, but I do think there's a huge opportunity right now to essentially get kids jobs. And the STEM angle is not just about STEM, because STEM is relevant to creative industries. STEM is relevant to contracting and trades. It's relevant to so many things, entrepreneurship. And I would really be excited to see how we might kind of all work together, because there's so many different programs and so many agencies doing such wonderful work. I think a convening could be really helpful. And again, not just to flap our gums, but to turn ideas into action and to try to produce these things in obviously a helpful way, a way that kind of prepares current youth for the job market, because I think that could make a very real impact. But also, like you just did a bit today, celebrating the successes in terms of that student. But I think there's more that we could find to put out there as well. So sure. I just wanted to put that out there. I know a lot of this has kind of been ongoing, but I think it's a good moment to get people together and assemble a broader coalition and really I had no idea we were under this kind of time frame. Like 3 years is short. And so I'd be very interested in figuring out how we can help do that. But I appreciate you, Doug. Thanks for your time today.
Appreciate the comments. I can mention the Mackay Observatories have agreed to co-sponsor a new position. It'll be a hire at the IFA, and that is for a new internship coordinator, which I think is going to be super helpful to connecting, particularly within engineering firms and the observatories and high school and undergraduate level student internships. So that's amongst the strategies we've got at work right now is basically just somebody to help organize between the internship providers and the students, because I'm convinced they're both there. There definitely is the need and the interest. So anticipate that whole program starting to wind up and gain momentum within 3 to 6 months.
Perfect. That's a great one to begin with.
Right. Thanks, Dana. Any more questions for Doug?
Um,
Oh, Matthias, go ahead.
David, if I may.
Sure.
I too, with Dennis, we saw this a couple weeks back, a month, whatever it was, and Doug and I have had some conversations. But I just wanted to let folks know on the call here that that at the legislature, people are the alarm bells are going, and we're having meetings to try and address this. And I'll talk with Doug more on it offline, but it is something that the legislature is looking at, and ideas are welcome. And that, yeah, it's a concern. Mauna Kea lies entirely in District 1, but David Tarnas has Keck up there in Waimea, and then Suliloi has UH and the rest of IFA, Imiloa organizations in her districts. Chris Todd and Gregor don't have them in, but all of us are pretty concerned and focused on this and looking for ways to help. It's a really complex issue, and I'm trying to get up to speed as fast as possible through these kind of meetings like this and conversations with Doug. And so I just wanted to put that out there that the legislature is looking at options and is available to help however we can.
Appreciate that, Matthias. And as I texted you, I think this morning, I'm happy to meet kind of anybody to brainstorm. We have ideas, but we really need to sit down and dedicate the effort to starting to flesh them out and move the ball down the field.
Yeah. Well, I think now the interim is where we can get some action going. As I said, we're meeting next week with a land and water chair. So the Senate is the next side that we need to kind of break into, and that's Lorraine. She's the chair of land and water for their side. Mark Hashem is land and water for the House. So we need to start bringing all those resources together.
Good.
Oh, excellent. So at this point, I think we're wrapping up. It's just close to 1 o'clock. Are there any final questions for our guest speaker? Okay, hearing none. I just want to say that this meeting is going to be recorded or is recorded. It's going to be available via YouTube. I think Carla is going to send that out later. And I wanted to again thank Doug for his excellent presentation that is very enlightening and super compelling to get things going on Mauna Kea, because the time is short. We need to support Doug, IFA, and the astronomy sector on behalf of the chamber. So again, once again, thank you very much for attending this EDC GAC meeting. On behalf of me and Dennis and Carla, thank you for joining. Mahalo, Doug. Aloha.
Okay. Mahalo, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much, Doug.